The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
A lot to get to with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. We'll discuss Deion Sanders for a moment. Also, is Nick Saban taking over for his coordinators, which is nothing new. And, of course, Tennessee, UTSA, the University of Texas San Antonio, the Battle of the River, the Battle of the River Walk, as it's River versus River Walk this upcoming Saturday at Neyland Stadium. Jimmy Hyams will join us as he does each and every Wednesday. We love that. We'll talk about Joe Milton if you haven't seen on offthehooksports.com. Joe Milton is not exactly the guy that Jimmy has the most faith in, so we will discuss that. Also, Vols to watch for UTSA and 5 UTSA players to watch for the Vols. So we get rolling right now. And Rick Barnes with a contract extension. Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How are you doing today, Dave?
Never better. We begin with 5 Vols to watch against UTSA, and this on offthehooksports.com via Caleb Calhoun. And let's count them down. So number 5 will be, and then I'm going to add in whether or not I think they bounce back and have a fantastic game after I'm looking through. Yeah, most of these guys didn't have a great game against Florida. So the guys to watch, I think essentially, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Caleb, but it's guys that need to bounce back from a subpar performance against Florida. Is that safe to say as far as guys to watch?
Partially, but it's also matchups, believe it or not. UTSA, the guys who really played poorly against Florida are guys that UTSA is somewhat designed to exploit, which is kind of a scary thought if you're a Tennessee fan. And so they actually have to take this one seriously.
All right. But UTSA is not as good as we thought they would be in the offseason. I think you and I would agree with that. They're 1-2 and just lost Army by, I believe, double digits. So I thought they would come in here as a very formidable opponent. I don't think that's the case, but goodness knows that Tennessee's not playing at its best. So if I think this player bounces back, you'll get a Hank Kingsley. Hey now. If I think that he won't, then you'll get a Tracy Morgan.
That's crazy.
All right, number 5. Who is it, Caleb Calhoun?
It is Andres Carrick.
Hey now.
I think you will, because Andre Carrick should now be accustomed to playing more with Cooper Mays out and him going into that left guard position as Ollie Lane was forced to move from left guard to center. I think Carrick will play better than he did against Florida when there were all kinds of issues and not being able to move the line of scrimmage. But that was Florida. This is UTSA. So I think he fares well against the Roadrunners.
And they're at home, which helps. I think I was between him and Ollie Lane, but you're more tied into this than I am, Dave. I don't know if Cooper Mays is going to go this week or not. But I will say that Texas San Antonio, they give up less than 3 yards a carry on the ground. They got a top 25 rush defense. So the interior of the offensive line is going to be tested again because Carrick and Lane played awful last weekend. It's between those two, and I don't know how much Lane's going to play. That's why I went for Carrick at number 5.
I mean, I understand the yards allowed, but you're talking about Houston Army and who was their middle opponent. Suddenly it escapes me. I don't who. Well, they haven't played. Here, we'll go ahead and you can go ahead and pull that up while I get to the next one. So number 4 would be
Texas State. Sorry.
Texas State, yeah. So I don't think that this is a football team that has proven itself by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly better than we thought. Number 4 is Kamal Hadden. I have tried my absolute best to be supportive of Kamal Hadden and his endeavor in college football, but
That's crazy.
I'm just I'm off the bandwagon. I mean, Danico Slaughter is a better player, should be back. I just don't see that Kamal Hadden is a number one cornerback, even though he has to be a number one cornerback if it's not Slaughter.
Last week wasn't really his fault, though. I mean, I know, look, everybody's mad about that non-tackle that was made. That was some of the worst tackling Tennessee gave up on that touchdown run. Kamal Hadden wasn't alone in not tackling on that play. But I got to say that I thought the secondary was largely fine last week. Again, it was the rush and lack of staying in their lanes on the edges that really cost Tennessee in the first half defensively. I don't know if he'll bounce back, but I think he's going to be matched up with Joshua Cephas, who is UTSA's top receiver, who is a deep threat. I don't know if Danico Slaughter, I don't know why he missed last week, but it just seems more likely that Kamal Hadden's going to be responsible for that this week, which is why I put him on here.
Joshua Cephas, no relationship to Hank Williams Jr., Bo Cephas. Number 3, Joe Milton III, Tennessee's quarterback.
Hey now.
I have no question that Tennessee's going to put him in position to play well. And if they don't, then you've got big time concerns about not just falling to 9 or 8 wins, but falling to 7 or 6. If he doesn't play well against UTSA, we're having a whole different conversation on Monday.
Yeah, I mean, was there any doubt that Joe Milton was going to be on this list? Obviously, he's going to be crucial in this game. And I'm just looking for, Dave, I don't know where you are, but I'm just looking for those crossing routes, those slants, those passes over the middle. What's the touch on the ball when he makes those throws? And also the timeliness of his throws. Those are the two big things for me right now. The command of the offense, that's going to return. He's not playing in the Swamp. He's playing at Neyland Stadium. It's going to be a lot friendlier crowd. He's not going to have the same issues that you had in Florida. It's going to be the timing and the accuracy. Is there anything else? The timing of the throws and the accuracy over the middle. Is there anything else we're really missing with him?
No, you're hoping for Clemson. I mean, you're hoping for that performance. And when he got the ball out, as soon as his back foot hit and it was on the mark, and part of his accuracy issues are slow reads. So that's part of the issue. So he needs to get the ball out quick. Number 3 is number 2 is.
Wow, Dave can't count. Oh, sorry, you came to me. Sorry, I was just saying Dave can't count. But okay, number 2 is John Campbell Jr.
John Campbell Jr.
Hey now.
I think he plays better because this is a different level of competition. I think it's fair to say he's still getting used to this offense, Caleb. And I also think that John Campbell Jr. has shown me flashes of being very good. So I'm not willing to say that he did have a couple of horrible plays early in the season, and you pointed those out, but I'm not willing to say that he's a bust quite yet as a transfer from Miami.
Well, in one way he'll be tested, but in another way it's made for him to show up this weekend. The test is that UT San Antonio, I talked about their top 25 rush defense. They are also 20th in percentage of pass plays that ended a sack nationally. So they're actually really good at rushing the passer. However, their star in that regard, Trey Moore, who has 4 sacks on the year, is out for an undisclosed amount of time. He was a linebacker. So now you don't know what you're going to get. But I still think John Campbell's going to be tested. And look, the tackles are a crucial part of the run game too. So I think John Campbell bounces back too, but either way, he's got to show up.
All right. Number 1 is Elijah Herring. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now.
Hey now.
He will play really well for one of 2 reasons. One, you'll see UTSA try to attack Tennessee horizontally. Now, he's seen that against a better opponent in Florida, so he'll be more adept at that. Not crazy about his physical ability to get sideline to sideline like some of the other players that Tennessee had, such as Keenan Pili, who's hurt, or maybe an Arian Carter, who they think is going to be an outside linebacker, and that's fine. I understand that. But Herring has seen it before, and if they just go straight up more of a typical offense, not constantly attacking the flats and the outside, I think that plays to his game as well. So out of this, you've got him number 1 of players with things to prove. I think he is the most likely to play really well on this group.
Wow. You think he's more likely than John Campbell to play well?
Yes. Out of this group, I think he's the most. to play better than last week. Maybe that's a better way of phrasing it.
Okay. No, that I could get with that. I think he's going to play well. I do. I'm with you. I think he's going to play much better this week. And he looked pretty good against Austin Peay, if you remember. And so and also UTSA has some injury issues at quarterback right now and on offense in general that favor Herring because the mobility is not going to be there. So we're going to come out of this game thinking, oh, Herring could be good. But you're right. I think the big thing is the more experience he has now dealing with the horizontal attack that is probably going to be used a lot more on Tennessee down the road, given the way Tim Banks attacks the quarterback.
Yeah, and let's talk about Tim Banks for a second. Tim Banks, I thought, got caught a little bit off guard by the way Florida attacked Tennessee horizontally. But does he deserve a little bit of credit for the adjustments at halftime and what his defense did in the second half when the offense was just kind of sputtering along?
I mean, it's hard for me to say credit because I don't think he was the problem much in the first half. I mean, I said from the start, the reason Florida was able to do that is because the offense couldn't build the lead that they should be able to build. I mean, how many times have we talked about this, Dave? Tim Banks has built a defense that plays off the offense. It reminds me, for those who don't remember in the NFL, the mid-2000s, the Colts, yes, they didn't have a good defense. It was never a top 10 defense. But what did they do really well? They rushed the passer. Remember Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis? They just unleashed them and played a cover two. The whole idea was Peyton Manning will get us a lead. Teams will try to come back and we'll unleash Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis and play a soft cover two and they won't be able to come back. That's Tim Banks. It's not the same scheme, don't get me wrong, but Tim Banks' defense is more vertical stunts, blitzes, things like that, when you know teams are going to try to get the big play to come back and get into the game. Florida didn't have to do that at all in the first half. I think what really happened in the second half was Tennessee just ran the ball a lot better, quite honestly. And that wasn't really the line. I think Jalen Wright just ran harder because he didn't have a lot of help. So that was
very fair. Bender of Strings says something that I'm going to disagree with here, Bender, and I appreciate the comment. I don't think that at any point Florida took their foot off the gas. I think that was their game plan, was to keep the ball in possession, whether or not that was the first half or the second half. So I don't think it was taking your foot off the gas. Good morning to all of you all joining us now. If you're in the morning, if you're in the evening, well, you can watch it now. We're non-linear media. So let's take a look at 5 UTSA Roadrunners to keep an eye on. So Caleb, give me number 5 on your list. You got Frank Harris at quarterback. Why is he not number 1?
Because he didn't play last week because of an injured toe, and he may not play this week. And if he's not, it's Eddie Lee Marburger who should be on here. But Frank Harris, when he's healthy, is still a really, really, really good, dangerous quarterback. Look, this list was already hard to do. It's harder when 2 of UTSA's best players are hurt. Frank Harris one and Trey Moore the other.
Okay, number 4.
Number 4 is Kavorian Barnes. He's a running back. He's not averaging 5 yards a carry, but he has 51 carries, 245 yards. And similar to Heupel, Jeff Traylor, the UTSA coach, is going to use him a lot as a workhorse before he can try to turn the deep ball.
All right, number 3.
By default, because of the fact that Trey Moore is hurt, I've got Danye Taylor at number 3. He's a linebacker safety hybrid. Got 3 tackles for a loss this year, but also watch out, not him, a former Tennessee player, a teammate of Bryson Easton's at Whitehaven, Martavius French, is now at UTSA, who is also playing linebacker. So keep an eye on him. That's if Danye Harris doesn't work out, or Danye Taylor, excuse me.
Number 2.
Brandon Brown. I talked about UTSA's top 20 rush defense and then being in the top 25 in sacks. Brandon Brown plays nose tackle for them. He doesn't get a lot of stats, but he is the anchor that makes that go. So watch out for Brandon Brown, particularly when, as we've talked about, the interior offensive line for Tennessee last weekend was historically transcendently awful. So,
and then you got Joshua Bo Cephas, who was born to boogie. Do you even get my Hank Williams Jr. references?
No, sorry, I don't.
It's great. There's a message board. Tell me if you get my Bo Cephas references. Joshua Bo Cephas, he was born to boogie, and it's a family tradition that he catches deep passes down the field at UTSA. There's 3 references to Hank Williams Jr., by the way.
Okay. Well, he stands at 6'3", and he has 24 catches, 247 yards, and you don't have faith in Kamal Hadden. So it's possible he goes off. So watch out for him.
All right. There you go. Breakdown of players you need to take a close look at on Saturday. With quarterback issues, there's no reason the Vols shouldn't go out and beat UTSA significantly. I want to remind you, Apex Apparel Group, design, brand, market your way. Unique products to promote your business with unparalleled customer service. ApexApparelGroup.com. ApexApparelGroup.com. It's time for What the H? And it is brought to you by our friend at Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Here we go.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
Really thought that Caleb just hit the nail on the head with his column at OffTheHookSports.com. Rick Barnes gets an extension. Let's get into the X's and O's of it. But first, the tenor of Caleb's column was all about this is stability in a program that has not had that traditionally. So how important is stability to the basketball Vols? Be sure to hit that subscribe and like button. We appreciate that. And if you're on a podcast platform, we would love a review. So stability, how important is it for Tennessee basketball? And let me give you an example. When I went to school in the 90s, there were times either because the basketball was so boring under Kevin O'Neal or it was Wade Houston before that, that you didn't know, even being a student on campus, if Tennessee was playing basketball. I mean, it was that bad, Caleb. And you're a little younger, so you caught a much better run. At times, a group that couldn't complete things, but at least you knew when the games were on. But let's talk about Barnes' contract extension, because this basketball program, more than anything, especially now that they've taken Thompson Bowling Arena and called it the quick checkout line brought to you by Food City, they've got to have a good basketball program. I don't know that they have to have a great basketball program, but they have to have a good basketball program, and Rick Barnes will bring you that.
Yes. What is I don't know what the phrase is, but, don't make perfect the enemy of good, or good, don't make good the enemy of perfect, or something like that. Because Rick Barnes, let me get this out of the way. He's the most overpaid coach in college basketball. There's not a close second. Rick Barnes is the fourth highest paid coach in college basketball right now, making about $5.88 million a year. His contract is extended through 2027, 2028. The coach is making more than him: John Calipari, Bill Self, Tom Izzo. We're talking multiple Final Fours, multiple national championships.
Five, if my count's correct, of national championships with those three guys, right?
Four.
Four.
But
okay.
Close still, and countless Final Fours. Rick Barnes has one Final Four, and it was 20 years ago. The reason you do this move from Rick Barnes is because you know what you can. If you're Tennessee, you know what can happen. So let's just go back through history real quick. For those who don't know, Rick Barnes is already the longest tenured coach at Tennessee since Don DeVoe. And Don DeVoe, you probably know more than I do, Dave, but as far as I'm aware, he was, I guess, it wasn't really forced out, but he kind of left under pressure to a certain degree, where it just didn't seem like the fan base wanted him around anymore in 1989.
Oh, yeah, he was definitely forced out. He was somewhat of a poor man's Rick Barnes. Okay, so Rick Barnes gets you to the NCAA tournament each and every year, right? Pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Don DeVoe is the guy that got you in the talk of being in the NCAA tournament each and every year, except for some really down years. So, no, Don DeVoe it was clearly time to move on. Don DeVoe was the longest tenured coach because Tennessee didn't give one iota about basketball. They looked at football, as it still is, and it's 80 to 90% of the revenue. And at the time, you had Doug Dickey was your athletic director, a former football coach. So he was focused on that. So they could have gotten just about anybody to average 18 to 20 wins, and he would have hung out a long, long time. What you're seeing now is a guy that averages getting into the NCAA tournament, and that's good enough to stay around for a long time. Is that good for Tennessee fans? Should that suffice? Should you be okay with that?
Let's go through history real quick. Since Don DeVoe, between Don DeVoe and Rick Barnes, no coach lasted more than 6 years at Tennessee. 2 were fired for NCAA violations. One just stupidly lied about it and wouldn't have gotten fired. And we're obviously talking about Bruce Pearl, who's had the most successful run, even beyond Rick Barnes, since Don DeVoe. And the other one was fired after 1 year because of it. So, and that's who Rick Barnes took over for. So 2 fired for NCAA investigations. You had Wade Houston, who was just a terrible coach and a disaster and was hired just to get Allen Houston. You had Kevin O'Neill, who is, as you point out, ran the most boring system imaginable and also said some really offensive things a lot of times. You had Jerry Green, who decided to trash his own fan base because he just, again, rolled the ball out, let him play, but did inherit a lot of Kevin O'Neill recruits and secured a class himself. You had Buzz Peterson, who was probably I'm sorry.
Do you know I can do a really good Jerry Green impression?
Oh, really? Do it.
Yes. Okay, ask me a question as if I'm Jerry Green looking back on my career.
Why did you blow a 9-point lead to North Carolina by jacking threes in the second half?
Well, I'll tell you, we're all ready for Brendan Hayward, and we got him in foul trouble. And then Julius Peppers came off the bench, but still, it's a pretty good team. And I guess if you don't like it, you can go to Kmart and rent a movie. They don't rent movies at Kmart, but he actually said that on ball.
He told Tennessee fans they can go to Kmart. Yes. In terms of character,
he told them to bleep off, basically.
Yes, exactly. In terms of character, probably the best person they hired was Buzz Peterson, but Buzz Peterson is your classic case of a former athlete who can't coach because he's a former athlete.
Travis says I sound like Andy Rooney. All right.
And then Bruce Pearl, and then the one I missed was Quanzo Martin, who, I mean, look, I'm not saying Quanzo was a great coach, but I understand Tennessee fans. I still thought there was a lot of pressure, and that was just a bad situation during the 3 years Quanzo was there.
You ever wonder why food's so expensive? That's Andy Rooney, who, by the way, Jerry Green never cursed me out, but Andy Rooney did. And Caleb's too young to remember, but he was the guy who, I won't do it anymore, Travis. But Andy Rooney was the guy who would basically do the kicker at the end of 60 minutes. So he had like 3 minutes to sound old and rip on young stuff. And by the way, Smoky Mountain Red brings up Buzz was Jordan's college roommate, the best man in his wedding and all that stuff. It wouldn't surprise me if it came out that they didn't even know each other, because you would think Michael Jordan, to help out his best friend and the best man in his wedding, would show up once to help your basketball program. And I covered that entire time, and he never showed up once. Can you imagine Michael Jordan had walked in Thompson Bowling just to watch a practice, what it would have done for Tennessee basketball?
Oh, it would have been amazing, but Michael doesn't. Here's the truth. Michael doesn't really like Buzz Peterson, and I'll tell you why.
Okay, I've never heard this. I'm super excited. Go.
So,
yes.
Buzz Peterson admitted in 2001 when he was hired at Tennessee that he did not like North Carolina recruiting Michael Jordan. He didn't think Michael Jordan would fit with the team. And Michael Jordan, in his Hall of Fame speech, mentioned players and coaches who doubted him, and Buzz Peterson was specifically named in his Hall of Fame speech. And so Michael Jordan, as we all know, takes things very personal. He feels like Buzz Peterson disrespected him. He feels like Buzz Peterson, Dean Smith, to motivate Michael Jordan, put Buzz Peterson above Michael Jordan on the depth chart initially when Michael Jordan was clearly better. So Michael Jordan genuinely has a level of vendetta against Buzz Peterson. Now, Buzz Peterson's like, hey, we're connected, so we're cool. And, Michael Jordan will be diplomatic and show up for his wedding because Buzz Peterson asked. But, yeah.
So do you think Tennessee stands by Rick Barnes until Rick Barnes is ready to retire? Or do
yes,
you think
because
or do you think they say that just making the tournament's not enough?
No, I think they stand by Rick Barnes. I don't think you run off for basketball. I don't think you run off a good coach for a potentially great coach who could also be bad. I'll tell you that this was a few years ago. It was about 2016. South Carolina and Kentucky were both in the Final Four. There were 2 Final Four teams from the SEC. And you had looked at the SEC basketball landscape, and there were a bunch of really good, not great coaches, and SEC basketball was thriving. and SEC football was horrible because the SEC and football at the time had run off so many good coaches because everybody was trying to have the next Nick Saban. This must have been like 2015, 2016. This was when Gus Malzahn, Butch Jones, Kevin Sumlin, like these were the best SEC coaches outside of Nick Saban, the most successful ones at the time.
All right. Why Jimmy Hyams does not believe that Joe Milton can take the Vols to the promised land. And he wrote that column on Off the Hook Sports on Monday. We'll visit with him next. Hall of Famer, longtime sports journalist Jimmy Hyams up next. Why he likes Joe Milton, but doesn't think that Joe Milton's the man. Stay tuned. Caleb Calhoun, Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
Our family has been creating one-of-a-kind pieces of jewelry in West Knoxville since 1986. Each piece is a combination of unique processes that bring your idea to life. Every day in our shop, a truly special item with a story all its own is being manufactured in our facility, bringing the history and family sentiment into a whole new generation of life. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler, a title that we value and respect. Because to me, being a jeweler and owning a jewelry store are not the same thing. I'm Rick Terry. I'm a jeweler, and we want to be your jeweler. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street right next to the Tennessee Theater.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
These mountains hold and defend a spirit far better than moonshine. A drink that holds flavor that becomes necessity. A hard cider made and relished by folk who are as hearty as they are legend. A refreshment that can only be found in one place. With a taste that makes you say, give me 3 bottles of the good stuff. Tennessee Cider Company, where necessity can be found.
Objective coverage. Hey, that's new.
If we get caught, we're going to jail.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app.
I'm going to need to see some identification.
Back to Dave Hooker.
Welcome back. Welcome back with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. As coming up on the program, sorry, had a little board issues. Coming up on the program, we will discuss a little bit of Nick Saban. Is he taking over? And I'm going to ask the question. We asked this before as far as a national championship question. Will he ever win a national championship again in Alabama? I think the question is worth asking, especially with some reports that he's kind of running things on both sides of the ball, which I think shows a lack of confidence in his coordinators. Is he ever going to win an SEC title? I mean, how about that question, especially with Texas and Oklahoma coming into the SEC, more so the Longhorns, of course. And the biggest concern for the Vols, not named Joe Milton. We'll get to that with Jimmy Hyams as well. And then you're going to see here in a little bit that Caleb and I vehemently disagree on something, and that's Deion Sanders. So portions of the program brought to you by our friends Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Look at me, no contacts. That's absolutely right. And no glasses as well. Enjoy life better when you see better. Local vision service for LASIK, cataract surgery, and regular eye examination. Go to ccteyes.com. That's ccteyes.com. Or you can check it out right below. Travis says Rick Barnes retires this year.
Are we sure we weren't talking about Nick Saban?
Oh, were you talking about Nick Saban? Okay. Well, okay. Who's most likely to retire after this year, Nick Saban or Rick Barnes?
Oh, honestly, I think Nick Saban's going to be coach until he's 85 or 90. I think he's going to be. I think he's going to go out onto the field on a wheelchair and coach. I'm going to be honest with you. So Rick Barnes, but I think honestly, I think Rick Barnes will too. Look at Rick Barnes, Dave. Do you see any? There's age, and then there's age. There's like age, but then there's people that are 80 that you could see 20 years left in them, and then there's people that are 60 and you think they're on their last leg. I think Rick Barnes is the latter. I really see Rick Barnes could probably coach until his late 80s. He looks like he's in great shape.
No, and a lot of those basketball coaches are able to do that. Same for Nick Saban. A couple of things that I wanted to throw out there as we wait Jimmy Hyams' connection. There are a couple of throws, and help me clarify on this comment. Orange Blood says that dime he threw to Thornton in the second half was beautiful. Need more of that, Joe. I want to make sure that we're talking about the same play. Are we talking about the deep slant over the middle close to the goal line? Is that what you're referring to, Orange Blood?
No, I actually know what he's referring to. There was the play. It was right after that where Thornton wanted the pass interference and it was incomplete. And then right after that, it was a beautiful third down throw over the middle that Thornton caught that got Tennessee down into the red zone. And they didn't convert because it was that 4th and 1. But that was the thing that was good about Joe Milton, and we keep underrating this in the game. His sideline accuracy and his vertical accuracy is so much better than it was 2 years ago. It's the touch he's putting on the ball and the command of the offense that are still issues. But the actual accuracy, Dave, that is a lot better than it was 2 years ago. There's no denying that at this point with Joe Milton.
That his accuracy is a lot better
than it was when he first started against Bowling Green 2 years ago. Yeah. Go back and watch tape from that game.
No, I'll take the homework into consideration, but I think that it's better, but it's still not good enough. You had brought up one point. Well, I don't want to get caught up in that, but there are a couple of plays, the Dante Thornton deep slant, and then there was one play, was it against Virginia with Ramel Keaton, that I thought that was underthrown. So sometimes, I've heard television commentators or even a completed pass that everything is great with Joe Milton, when in reality, it hasn't necessarily been, because if you lead those players out a little bit, they score. All right, Jimmy Hyams joins us now. He is a Hall of Famer. He's fantastic, and he wrote what I think is one of the best pieces that's been on Off the Hook Sports, which isn't saying a lot. We've just been around 16 months, Jimmy, so don't take too much for that compliment. But it's just exploding. But I thought it was very good. So let's start. Now I want to get into the column specifically, because I felt the same way on Sunday, and it was a perfect timing that you wrote it, because it was better than the angle I had. But what do you think of Joe Milton before we get in depth in your column? And what did you think of his play on Saturday and to this point in the season?
Well, I thought his play on Saturday wasn't good enough. I thought he played pretty well against Virginia. I didn't think he played well against Austin Peay. He was 1 out of 8 to start that game. And here was an incredible stat about Austin Peay. We talked about him just throwing those out routes all the time. He didn't throw hardly anything downfield. Tennessee had 228 passing yards. 210 were yards after catch. What does that tell you? That tells you all he's doing is throwing those out. I think he completed 18 of his 21 passes at the line of scrimmage, or right at the line of scrimmage. Here's my concern about Milton, and I like him a lot, and I think Tennessee can average about 30 points a game with him, but they cannot be at optimum efficiency because his skill set doesn't fit this offense. And there are 3 factors that I think are missing. 1, he doesn't run the ball very well. Secondly, he doesn't throw the ball very well on the run. And third, he does not make the quick decisions necessary to run this offense. So those are the 3 concerns I have. Now, again, they can average 30 points. They can win 7 or 8 ball games with him, but they can't win 10 or 11 with Joe Milton, in my opinion.
Jimmy, to further bolster your point, I was told by somebody within the program that the game against Clemson, it was actually surprising how accurate he was on those slants and dig routes that we talked about, that I thought he could make hay on after watching that game. But I was told right before the season that was the surprising thing. They didn't think that he would actually go out and perform like that. So if he can't hit on those balls and Tennessee can't run the ball without Cooper Mays, defenses are going to play back. And I think we saw that against Florida. So what's the answer?
Well, actually, I think some defenses, you said they may play back.
Mm-hmm.
I think some defenses may press the wide receivers to take away those quick outs.
That could be the next evolution. Great point.
Bubble screens. And so, and here's the other part of that. How many times under Hendon Hooker did you see them have to call a timeout to avoid delay of the game? I don't remember that. But with Joe Milton, you had to do it twice on the first series of the third quarter. There's some communication problems there. How much of that is not having Cooper Mays at center? I don't know. That's hard to gauge. But I also think it's a concern about Milton being able to process things quickly. And I thought, this is just an observation, nobody told me this, I thought watching that game with the play calling, they didn't look like they trusted Joe Milton.
Completely agree.
Yeah, we got to do this, got to do that. But we can't throw the whole book at Florida because we don't trust Joe Milton to do the right thing. And so I think they got pretty conservative with their play calling at times.
Jimmy, I've been on I haven't blamed the play calling too much just because I actually thought a lot of because Heupel's offense is so dependent on being able to establish those 5, 6, 7 yard runs regularly if they're going to be able to do what they need to do offensively. What I do start to criticize Heupel for, though, and I want to know your thoughts on this. Look, to me, it looks worse and worse by the week that Josh Heupel ever considered Joe Milton over Hendon Hooker, because it's obvious to anybody with eyes that Hendon Hooker is so much of a better quarterback. And I just have to think, isn't that a long-term problem of Josh Heupel, the talent evaluator? Because there's no debate. Hendon Hooker was, and I said this from the start, ask Virginia Tech fans about losing Hendon Hooker, ask Michigan fans about losing Joe Milton. Virginia Tech fans were much more on Hooker's side than Michigan fans were on Milton's side. And Heupel, I think against the will of the team, went with Milton at the beginning of 2021.
I can't say it was against the will of the team. I don't know that. I do know, and I was surprised at this, that a lot of the media covering Tennessee said that the challenge between Milton and Hooker wasn't close. That's not what I saw. And now, look, people fell in love with Milton's arm. You'd sit there and watch him throw an 80-yard pass. Okay, great. It's not so great if it's not caught and it's 80 yards over or 20 yards over the receiver's head. But here's the other part of that. When Tennessee decided to go with Milton over Hooker, I talked to Pat Ryan, who went to a lot of practices, and I said, who would you go with? He said, Hooker. I said, why? He said, he's more consistent and the offense moves the ball better when he's at quarterback. And then the staff went with Milton. Now, I don't know all the reasons why, other than I know he's got a great arm. Maybe they saw the ability to stretch the field better with Milton than Hooker. But, Caleb, I'm kind of in your camp. When you look back, it's like, how in the world could they have chosen Milton over Hooker, other than just the fact he's got a cannon for an arm?
Yeah, and one of the things that we can't pin on Heupel is that we saw during the season, and Smoky Mountain Red posted this, we saw during the season, Hendon had that killer instinct, and he would get mad when he would get hit. And I don't want to read too much into a post-game interview because you've got the rest of the season to play for. But to be honest with you, I watched it 2 or 3 times, and it just seemed like to me that Joe Milton was like, everything's going to be okay. No big deal. Just lost to Florida. I mean, that's your SEC rival, and you're a 7-point favorite. Jimmy, that's a big, big deal.
To me, yes, it is a big deal. And Tennessee, I thought, would win the game. Now, I didn't buy into this double figure stuff, and somebody picked Tennessee 41-13, which I thought was crazy. I thought it'd be a close game. I thought Tennessee would win by 7. I picked 27-20. But with Milton, I wonder if he's struggling and figuring out how he's supposed to act after a game, because, man, I'd be ticked off. But maybe he's like, okay, I don't want to show panic because I don't want the rest of the team to show panic. But still, I mean, a little bit of anger, a little bit of emotion, I don't think that hurts you to do that, to show that you're disgusted with the way the game went. So maybe he's struggling to find that role of a leader, or maybe that's just his personality. Oh, well, now we lost. Let's go to the next game. I would struggle with that if I were a teammate or a coach.
I would be so – I think I would be so mad. It's just we're all wired different that every answer would be about 5 words long. And the media would be mad at me. I'd be fine. I want to get on the plane. And that's just how I'm wired. Caleb, I want to get to you too. But the obvious question, Nico was the number 1 quarterback in the country. Big reason why people are excited for him. Actually, he was number 2 behind Arch Manning. But nevertheless, he's the highest rated prospect that Tennessee's ever gotten. They didn't have it around for Peyton Manning. So, Jimmy, let me throw at you what I hear. I hear they love Joe Milton, that aside from an injury, there is no way they would turn to Nico. But obviously there has to be some sort of threshold. Do you think Nico is even in the cards at this point?
It's hard to say the way you phrased it, at this point. I think they want to stick with Milton. Look, if they have to go to Nico, that's bad news, right? That means that Joe Milton's not playing very well and the team's not doing very well. Mm-hmm. The part where they are not going to go to Nico at all this year, I'm not buying that. I'm not buying that at all. It depends on how Joe Milton plays. And if Joe Milton struggles and can't move the team and can't score points, they're going to make a change. So I don't buy into there's no way they'll make a move unless Milton gets hurt. But as far as right now, I don't know that they're ready for that. We heard Joey Halsley talk about how he felt like Milton played well against Florida, that he was operationally good. Obviously, they felt like he played better than I did. So I think if Milton struggles in the next couple of games, they're going to go to Nico Iamaleava, and they may go to him by game 6 or 7 if Milton struggles a lot and Tennessee has trouble scoring. If Milton plays against Texas San Antonio like he did against Austin Peay, I mean, that's just not good enough. So
you're looking at a 6-6 season.
You might be. I mean, I'm sitting there thinking, well, I wasn't going that low. I was thinking 7-5, 8-4, but it's possible. I mean, you start looking at a lot of these teams. I thought, well, okay, I'm pretty confident Tennessee's going to beat. I'm not so confident that they're going to beat some of these teams now. So I think it brings a lot more losses into the equation.
Yeah, Jimmy, it's funny you say that. I went really high for Tennessee this year because I was basing it off what everybody in connected to Tennessee was saying by Milton. And that's went against every instinct of my life. I've always gone by my eyes on the field, not what people say in practice.
I thought you were going based on that big win over Clemson.
Which I think you might be more on my side now that game didn't actually happen.
It happened. I just don't think it had anything to do with this year.
Speaking of Clemson, one of the comparisons I draw into Tennessee, and I want to know your thoughts on this, Jimmy, is that I think they're kind of in a transition year like Clemson specifically was in 2014. If you remember, Taj Boyd really helped build Clemson up under Dabo, similar to what Hendon Hooker did for Tennessee. And then Deshaun Watson, whatever you think of him personally, and I don't think highly of him, took Clemson to the next level. And in between that, there was that 2014 transition year where Cole Stout was the quarterback. Do you think the Tennessee coaches, and it's possible that they're seeing this year as a transition year from Hooker to Nico, where Joe Milton's the quarterback? Well, he can keep them above water, 8, 9 wins, whatever, and then they can really just turn it loose next year?
I don't think that's the way they viewed it. I really think they believe that Joe Milton would perform at a level that could help them win at least 9 games. I think they felt that way. Now, there's some other pieces of this equation. I mean, the receivers haven't played at a high level. The offensive line hasn't played very well. The secondary can't tackle. So you've got some other issues. But, Caleb, I really think the coaching staff has more – I would say this. They seem to have more confidence in what Milton could do than what we do. So I don't think they looked at this as a transition year. Yeah, we'll just kind of suffer through Joe Milton until Nico's ready. I think they felt like Milton was good enough to get them to 9 or 10 wins.
I agree with that. Portions of the program brought to you by Herald Group Security Solutions, leadership experience, specialization, addressing problems through unique mission-specific mitigation techniques, also making your children safer one school at a time. If your child goes to private school, go to your administrator, mention heraldgrp.com because they undergo 60-day training for their security, and we're looking to get that available in public schools as well very soon. It is time for 4 Downs. It is brought to you by our friends at Zen Sports. We'll tell you more about that as Zen Sports is bringing the cash back to gambling. Download that app. Use the promo code HOOK, but I'll tell you more about that as we get to 4 Downs, which is right now with Jimmy Hyams and Caleb Calhoun.
4 Downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
Downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Okay, so that's where we stand on Joe Milton, but I don't think that saying it's all Joe Milton's fault would be accurate. So what's the biggest concern for the Vols not named Joe Milton? That'll be 4 Downs as we get to that right now. And Cooper Mays may not be on the field, but he is in my drop board. So, Coop, what should people do?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
And what down, Coop?
Coop here. First down.
There we go. Tennessee's defense, missed tackles and out of position. So, Jimmy, I will ask you as far as a concern, huge, somewhat, or they'll be fine?
Huge concern. That lack of tackling, the lack of effort in tackling, what you saw at Haddon, that's ridiculous. It's kind of funny. Somebody said, I've seen cornerbacks do bump and run, but you're not supposed to bump and run a running back. So I just
not supposed to bump and run away either.
Yeah. And then fall down. I just don't think the secondary is all that good. They haven't faced a real good passing team. Florida's not a real good passing team. They're an above average passing team, and they shredded the secondary, in particular on 3rd down in the first half. And then the secondary is not very good at tackling. Now, Danico Slaughter did not play. He's probably the best tackler. I was told in the aftermath that he had an injury of some sort, which was undisclosed. But I have big concerns about this secondary going forward. I don't think they're really good in coverage and not very good at tackling. And so when a running back or a receiver breaks loose, I'm not real confident that the defensive back is going to get them down.
Caleb, missed tackles out of position, huge, somewhat, or they'll be fine as far as a concern on your end?
I'm actually going to break with Jimmy. I'm going to do the reverse on this one. I'm going to think they'll be fine on this one. I think Tim Banks' defense, we've talked about it, is designed for a vertical attack that plays off the offense getting a lead and teams being desperate, and the offense never put them in a position to do what they're supposed to do in the first half. And that one run was ridiculous. I mean, it wasn't just Kamal Haddon, by the way. I forget who the linebacker was that tried to tackle him with his backside. I've never seen that one before in my life. Okay. I thought that Lil Jon song, back it up. I thought that was going to come on because it looked like that's what he was doing. But
Jimmy, if it makes you feel any better, I don't know who Lil Jon is either.
I've heard of him. I just don't listen to his music.
You go. You're talking to the guy who's
listen to Get Low. I'm not going to sing the lyrics to the song out here because everybody my generation should be ashamed of ourselves for liking that song. I'll be the first to admit it. But yes, it was a very catchy song. But yes, that was embarrassing. But I do think Tennessee's defense is not designed for open field tackles and wrapping up. It's designed to create havoc with a vertical attack that really forces errant mistakes by the quarterback and the backs in general.
I thought we were talking about defensive backs. Did I miss that?
Oh, I thought he just said defense. Did he say defensive backs?
I said, well, I think that I said Vols defense missed tackles and out of position. So kind of all under one roof.
Okay.
But I see where both you guys are coming from.
Well, I would go more toward the middle on that. I think that, and I was focusing on the secondary. Maybe I just had that in my mind. I think the defense, I think the front four is pretty decent. I think the linebackers are all right. I think they didn't have a great game. But as far my huge concern is the secondary. Overall on defense, it would be more middle of the road, but the secondary to me is a huge concern.
Okay, we're trying to keep Joe Milton out of this part of it, and it's going to be difficult to do on this one. We're going to try. Coop, what down is it?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Communication. Nobody's mentioned the fact that there is a new offensive coordinator in place. Cooper is out. So part of it's got to be Joe, right? But communication in general, and they don't get Dylan Sampson in the game, the pre-snap confusion, just communication on the offensive side, huge, somewhat, or they'll be fine as far as it's concerned.
I'm going to go somewhat because I think that's easily fixable. But here's my concern about that. That I don't see that being an issue when they play at home. But when they go on the road in a hostile environment, like Gainesville is, like Alabama is, I have concerns about their ability to deal with that. And if you look at it, even a year ago, they struggled a little bit. Now, somebody said, well, yeah, it was against Georgia last year. Look, Georgia's defense was phenomenal, so I don't think it was just crowd noise. But I do think the crowd noise on the road has had an impact with communication with Tennessee. I think they had 5 illegal procedures against Florida. They had several against Georgia last year. On the road, that offense – now, Missouri didn't have any fans, so it doesn't matter. But on the road, that offense struggles a little bit.
Caleb, huge somewhat, or they'll be fine as far as communication?
I'm with Jimmy. I'm going to go somewhat, and I think it's a road thing. And, again, Tennessee – Jimmy, I talked about this last year. Georgia and South Carolina were really the only hostile environments Tennessee faced last year. And they lost both of those games. And then Florida this year, there's an underlying issue of Tennessee and hostile environments with this offense that Josh Heupel's got to figure out. The only one I think they played well in was Kentucky in 2021.
4 Downs brought to you by Zen Sports, the new sports book in Tennessee, revolutionizing the way you earn sports betting rewards. I would go somewhat as well on that. That means no more deposit bonuses that turn into deposit nightmares on Zen Sports. What you see is what you get, and you get their cash rewards program and a lot of cash. For a welcome bonus, earn an unlimited 5% cash back on your betting volume for your first 15 days when you sign up with promo code HOOKED. That's HOOKED. Unlimited 5% cash back. Keep betting, keep earning with up to 3% cash back on your betting volume every month. And after that, refer friends to earn a percentage of their betting volume as cash rewards too. Zen Sports bringing the cash back to Tennessee. So if you bet big on sports, you want to be betting Zen Sports. Zen Sports betting just got better. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Must be 21 and over and in Tennessee to bet. What down, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. 3rd down.
Thank you. Tennessee's receivers not developing. Jimmy, that is a huge concern, somewhat of a concern, or they'll be fine.
I'm going to go somewhat. I've been disappointed that Dante Thornton hasn't developed into the player I thought he would. I think the coaching staff was very high on him in the spring. He's the Oregon transfer that's 6'5" and has great speed. I think Squirrel White has played really well. Keaton has been pretty average. McCoy, I think they need to target him more. Now, I'll say this. He's been a heck of a blocker. He's done a really nice job in that phase, so he's a complete receiver. But I think he needs more opportunities to catch football.
Caleb?
I'm going to go huge because I think Tennessee's offense is actually built around the receivers more than the quarterback. And the way the coaches thought was we have NFL receivers, so even if Joe Milton's a little inaccurate, think Dante Culpepper throwing to Randy Moss back in the day. Dante Culpepper was a terrible quarterback, but he got away with it because he had some good receivers to throw to. And I don't think the receivers have been able to bail out Joe Milton from his mediocrity this year, which they thought he would be able to.
I'll say 2 things. I think Squirrel White can create yardage on his own through passes that Joe Milton doesn't have to be a lead on down the field. Mm-hmm. And I think there are times that you throw it to Brew McCoy even when he's covered because I think he's a big physical guy and he's going to be able to make plays. What down, Coop?
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
Tennessee's offensive line, huge, somewhat, or they'll be fine. Where do you rate that as a concern, Jimmy?
I'm huge right now.
I'm too.
Now, okay, first off, I think they lost their 2 best offensive linemen from a year ago. I thought that Darnell Wright, who was the number 10 pick in the draft, and then Jerome Carvin, I thought they were their 2 best. Now, they had some other pretty good linemen, but I thought those are the 2 best. Now you've been without Cooper Mays. Who knows when he's going to come back? The head coach kept saying – he kept hinting that he was going to play against Florida, which I thought was a disservice to Cooper because now the fans have reacted negatively toward Cooper, calling him soft and other things because he didn't play because they thought he was going to play because the coach said he was going to play. So anyway, I don't think that the other offensive linemen have played that well. I'm concerned about the right tackle. I'm concerned about one of the guard positions. The left tackle, John Campbell, I think he's pretty good, but he's been pretty good. He was pretty good against Virginia and Austin Peay, which are terrible. I didn't think he was so good against Florida. So I think that's a big concern.
Caleb, huge somewhat, or they'll be fine?
Somewhat right now, because I think this offensive line will take a big leap forward when Cooper Mays is able to get back at center. I haven't seen too many issues at right tackle, funny enough, with Jeremiah Crawford, but huge long-term, because look, Tennessee still hasn't found enough offensive linemen for 2024, and that's a problem.
Jimmy, I'm going to let you out of here. Sorry to keep you so long, but the one thing I did want to ask, this is a complete, just out of left field. Somebody asked me about, I'm not reporting this. I'm not even saying that it's a realistic possibility, but somebody close to the program, not within the program, did ask me, have you heard anything about Cooper Mays undergoing another procedure?
I have not heard about him undergoing another procedure.
Okay.
I mean, I think a lot of us know what it is. I've actually heard so many people say it. I don't know if anybody's been reporting it.
I haven't, out of respect for Cooper. And I heard you, I think it was on Football Finals, that you didn't say it. So you're my mentor, so I followed your lead.
Yeah, well, my hands are tied when somebody tells me something off the record. But when I hear it from 5 or 6 other people, then, I mean, he had sports hernia surgery. That's what happened. That's why he's out. And hopefully he can come back. So I do think he makes a difference. I think he's a good football player. I think he helps them as far as the communication. I think he helps them as far as making sure everybody's lined up properly. And so I think that the offensive line can take a step forward with him. But the line otherwise has not performed at the level that I thought against. And like, I'm gauging it against Florida. Virginia is so bad and Austin Peay is so bad. I can't really say, oh, look how, Campbell ran this guy up into the stands against Virginia. Okay. What'd you do against Florida? I didn't think the offensive line was good at all against Florida. And that is my primary gauge.
Jimmy,
but I've not heard about another procedure with Cooper, though, by the way.
I haven't either, but now that you say it, I've heard the hernia was actually, and I think you and Josh Ward, your cohort, didn't you suffer hernias while we all worked together?
Yes, I had hernia surgery.
Yeah, and I
couldn't play a game for 4 weeks.
I know Jimmy couldn't block it. I blame soul, but I was told it was in 3 different spots. So I've never had a hernia. I don't know what that means. But the next question we're going to ask you, but Jimmy, I'm going to let you out of here. But I do want to just real quick, if you had to say yay or nay, Alabama will win an SEC championship under Nick Saban, yes or no? Because that's what we're going to do in the next segment. But you would say. This year or ever? Ever.
I'm going to say he will not win another one.
Ooh, that's hot.
Reacting.
I didn't agree with you.
Well, let me explain. How old is he? He's 72.
Mm-hmm.
Who's his quarterback in the wings that you think is going to be able to win an SEC championship? Who is that guy? He doesn't have him. So I think he's going to retire within a couple of years, and I don't think he'll be better than Kirby Smart. So I don't think he's going to coach till he's 80 years old. Yeah. So I think he's going to coach a couple more years, and I think that's it. And I don't think he'll win a title within the next 2 years.
Jimmy, yeah, that's awesome. Jimmy, you're very generous with your time. Have a blessed day, sir. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Y'all have a good day.
Jimmy Hyams on a Wednesday. You can't beat that. I'm going to share with you why I think that Nick Saban's SEC championship days are done as well. Caleb's going to call me Mr. Overreactor 90 seconds.
Candace, I was really heavy into the drug culture. I was selling drugs. I was just constantly in pain. I was missing like a good support system in my life. Candace has given me everything that I need in order to successfully have a wonderful recovery, in order to have a life that I didn't even know was possible. And it's not just about me anymore, and I love that. I absolutely love it.
You can take your life back. Call Cadis today.
With all that sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center. Ah.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Welcome back. It's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, as we're going to dive into a topic that Caleb's already making fun of me about, so maybe I can't even hang with him. It is time for today's tough question.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right. Nick Saban. Caleb, first of all, let me find out if you and I agree that he won't win, just give me a yay or nay, multiple national titles at Alabama. You would agree with that, right?
Yeah, he won't win multiple.
Okay, I'm whittling down here. A national title at Alabama before he's done.
Yes, because I disagree with Jimmy. He's going to coach till 80.
Okay. So you're definitely saying SEC title. So that's what I wanted to get to.
No, I'm not. No. When the SEC goes to 16 teams and the playoff goes to 12 teams, an SEC title will be harder than a national title in a year.
Interesting. Okay. So today's tough question, we want to give you some backstory here and my thoughts. Today's tough question is, will Nick Saban win an SEC championship before he is done at Alabama? Yay or nay?
Yay. I'll still go yay. Just by odds, I'll go yay.
That's funny. You've kind of argued with yourself there. But anyway.
No, I just said it. National title is more likely, but I still will give him one SEC title left.
Okay. Backstory. You believe that Nick Saban is monkeying around with his coordinators, correct? Tell me why.
Yes, and by the way, I have to tell you guys this, for everybody that doesn't like him, this is why we in the media will always give Lane Kiffin a pass and love him, because Lane Kiffin will honestly give you gold to write about. There's only a few coaches that do that, Dave, right? And Lane Kiffin is probably one of the best if you're a media member. And he basically said in the press conference the other day that he was asked, what's it like going against Steele's defense? And he basically said, it's more like we're going against Saban's defense. No, I'm not quoting him directly, but he basically said he thinks that Saban's calling the plays. Saban comes out and volunteers information, basically says contrary to what's been out there, Kevin Steele's our defensive coordinator. On top of that, there are rumors circulating right now that the move back to Jalen Milroe was a Saban move. And the move to Tyler Buckner and to bench Jalen Milroe was actually a Tommy Rees move, the offensive coordinator, so this is Saban saying to the offensive coordinator, you don't know what you're doing. I'm taking over the offense. And Lane Kiffin is hinting that Saban is telling Kevin Steele, you don't know what you're doing. I'm taking over the defense.
Okay. We agree, but I think you think he'll win another SEC title. I don't, because Texas is coming into the conference, and I don't think he'll ever be better than Kirby Smart. And I do agree with Jimmy. I think he's got 2 to 3 to 4 years in him, as opposed to you're saying like 8. Now, if you're right on the 8, I'm totally on board with you. He'll win a national title, okay? Because he will adjust from what I think has been a bad adjustment in going backwards in football, and that's controlling the football and playing great defense. I know it's working for Kirby Smart, but he has had a very special run of quarterbacks. You can name them off: Tua, Jalen Hurts, Bryce. Yeah, Bryce Young, Mac Jones. You can go on and on and on. That's a special run. That's not going to happen very likely for any program in the nation ever again. And historically, it's insano. It's even better than when Tennessee had Peyton, T, Clausen, Ainge. That was a great run. You would take those 4 right now. But
and you forgot about Heath Schuler before Peyton.
Right. Slight couple years in between because of the transition. But you're right. That was a special run. But you take the guys that we just mentioned at Alabama over that. So I think there's some luck to that. I don't think you'll have that again. That's point A. Point B, I think he's always monkeyed around. I've talked to a coach that was on his staff, and he said it wasn't unusual to come up and take the offensive game plan. Now, they run the same plays. It's not like he's ripping up the plays and say, no, rip it up on a Thursday night and say, we're going to do this instead. And it's worked for him. But here's why I don't think he wins another SEC title, because I don't think he coaches as long as you do, and we'll find out. We've all speculated on that. I also think that he won't have the run of quarterbacks. I don't know who his next great quarterback is, and I don't necessarily think he's on the roster right now. And he doesn't seem to think so, because he's played basically all of them for a little bit to see how they do. And now he's going back to Jalen Milroe. So, and the other thing is, I think he's gone backwards in time a little bit, whereas you have to have an offense that's somewhat explosive or the most dominant roster in the nation. There's only one team right now that has the most dominant roster in the nation, and they wear red instead of crimson. It's Georgia. So I don't believe that he will win another SEC title. And I'll add to that with Texas coming into the SEC. So portions of the program, including today's tough question, brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. He's my realtor. He should be yours. Best prices and service in the biz. That's Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Check him out. So, Caleb, digest that for a moment. What I just said, call me crazy if you like.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack.
Tracy Morgan always does, that's for sure.
That's crazy.
So you say Nick Saban went back in time. I agree with you. Now I'm going to ask you a question real quick. Now you say he monkeys around a lot. You're more tight end because of your years reporting than I am. Do you think this is more than usual though with Tommy Rees at least? Do you think he's decided, Tommy Rees, you suck after 2 games, or you're terrible, I'm taking over, you don't know how to call plays?
I think it's more than it was with Lane Kiffin.
Or Jimbo.
Okay. Or Jimbo. Yes. I think other than that, it's pretty much status quo.
Okay. On defense, I agree with you. It's always been Nick Saban's defense, right? Nick Saban has always ran the defense.
Yes.
Yes. And okay. So here's one of the things that's kind of interesting. And this is on a broader take. And stay with me here. Have you seen what Baltimore's doing in the NFL right now?
Mm-hmm.
They're looking really good. And Lamar Jackson looks like an early MVP candidate. Who's their offensive coordinator?
Help me.
Todd Monken, who was at Georgia the last 2 years.
Right.
I think Nick Saban, yes, he went back in time. I think Kirby Smart went back in time too with Mike Bobo. And what I'm saying is we underrated how great of an offensive coordinator Todd Monken was at Georgia last year.
Agreed. And probably underrated Brian Daboll at Alabama.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We underrated both of them. And I think Nick Saban went back in time. Here's where this is a rare mistake by Nick Saban. He went back in time based on a media narrative that wasn't true. The media narrative was that Kirby Smart was winning national championships the old Nick Saban way, which was a simplistic offense and all defense. No, that offense was very, very, very cutting edge. Go back and watch the motions and the plays Georgia ran. Dave, we saw Georgia play Tennessee, covering Tennessee, and Georgia just overwhelmed Tennessee on the offensive line, and that was just a different game. But Todd Monken is a very creative offensive coordinator, and Tommy Rees is not. And I think that's an overreaction. I think Tommy Rees is going to be out of there in a year, and Nick Saban will find a better offensive coordinator. Now, Kevin Steele, that is totally a Nick Saban's like, I'd rather just run the defense. For those who don't know, Kevin Steele is actually not a bad defensive coordinator. For people who bring up the 70 points with the Clemson game 10 years ago, I'm going to expose something that I'm a little uncomfortable because we don't know all the details, but Kevin Steele has once every 5 to 10 years what we might call a mental lapse in a game. He was coaching at Carolina one year. No, he was coaching a defensive coordinator at Auburn, I think, one year, and pulled out an old playbook from Carolina in the middle of the game to call that. I think that was the game. It happens once every 5 years, and it's something that just, I don't know what happens when he does it, but it does happen every now and then. I think Saban brought in Kevin Steele, knowing that outside of that, Kevin Steele can coach defense, and Nick Saban can be the guy to call plays and take over when things go rough. I think Nick Saban is actually more on a mission and on a tear. I think Nick Saban was very frustrated about Georgia the last 2 years. He dominated on the recruiting trail, and Nick Saban has decided, I want guys that will run what I want to run, but I want to fully take over this team. I'm so driven right now. I'm going to do everything. I'm running everything until I get another national title. I think that's Nick Saban's. I think he's working harder right now than he's ever worked before. And for people who compare him to Bear Bryant, because I saw that people say he's older than Bear Bryant was one of the most out of shape 65-year-old men in the history of college football. I mean,
the guy was famous for smoking a pack of cigarettes, leaning up against the goalpost before a game, and was quite the drinker.
Yes.
So yeah, these are two different dudes.
Yes, exactly. Nick Saban is the most driven. He works 20 hours a day. I think I work hard with what I do. Nick Saban doesn't stop working all the time. And everything I've read is people close to the program talk about he is more driven than ever before. And I think he hired coordinators basically in name only this time. And he wants to run the entire show, he's doing more work than any coach in football right now.
All right. Changing gears. Deion Sanders, a smokescreen. You say that he's a smokescreen because he didn't remember a player's name. All right.
Yes.
So I'm going to let you make your case, and then I'm going to show you why you're wrong.
Well,
But let's pull this up first. Here is Deion Sanders talking to the media when he forgets one of his players' names.
Yes, this is so for context. Hank Zelinskas was starting at center for Colorado because their first and second stringer went down in the game. And Deion was asked about how he played. Here's his response.
And we got a field goal.
Hey, Coach Carlos Bryant, DSM. Can you talk about Hank Zelinskas? He was the true freshman that got the start today at center. Hank Zelinskas.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking Hank.
Yeah, he got the start as a true freshman today at center. Can you talk about him?
Sorry, that's all you needed. He didn't know who his center was. He did not know who he was.
I have to be honest with you, I have zero problem with that. Because the roster turned over about 50% from last year. And the guys could go by nicknames. And I don't think that Deion Sanders is anywhere close to a traditional coach. I think he's there to raise money. And I want to tie this into a Tennessee thing that you guys might find interesting. When Tennessee hired David Cutcliffe because Randy Sanders didn't work out, I remember Philip Fulmer talking to the media after the press conference, the few that would hang out and continue to get a little more info. And he said, I see this evolving as me being a recruiter and a guy that is able to raise money. And I thought it was a very open moment for Philip to say that. And Caleb, I believe that this was a simple oversight. I don't think you would see it from a Josh Heupel, but I don't think it's an indictment of Deion Sanders that he is not going to have success, because I believe he will. I don't think that he cares as much about his players 1 to 85. I think he cares about the guys that are going to help him win. And I don't know that Hank Zelinskas is part of his long-term plan in Colorado.
I'm totally going to push back. Now, I want this out there before I say what I'm about to say. I've not been one of those, Deion is breaking with traditions of college football. I think there's a lot of college football fans upset at Deion because there's new fans who don't know a lot about college football watching the sport now, and they don't like how little those new fans know. Guys, accept it. That's life. I want things I follow to have more fans, and I'm sure you do too, Dave. Okay, and I can just tell you, when I moved to DC and a lot of hockey fans tried to get me to get into hockey, I got into it, and then all they did was lecture me on how much I didn't know, and I got sick of hockey fans doing that. So I'm like, you know what? I'm never watching hockey again. Accept it when you have casual fans who may not know as much about the sport, and Deion's doing a great job bringing those in. This is a big deal because I do think he'll have success this year. Can he have success long-term, though? And here's what I mean by that. Deion is having success because Sean Lewis and Charles Kelly are doing a heck of a job as offensive and defensive coordinators, and then he can just go out on the recruiting trail and sell the program and sell Colorado. Great. Philip Fulmer knew every one of his players. I mean, I remember he knew him, and he knew them personally. I mean, what I think the best thing about Philip Fulmer is for the most part, he really tried to develop a personal connection with every single player on Tennessee if he could, even if he wasn't going to coach them on the day-to-day practices. And with Deion, I'm not talking about scandal here, but I am going to go here. It reminds me a lot of Joe Paterno at Penn State, who did not even coach Penn State the last 10 years, who got credit for a win at against Tennessee, where he sat in the press box with his foot up on the table and just watched the game without even wearing a headset, and he got credit for that win. Joe Paterno, I'm going to question if he ever coached a game in his life. He should have all his wins removed because he didn't actually coach. Okay, he just watched the game as a fan and hired staff to coach. And I have to be honest, I'm seeing that in Deion Sanders. And I don't think that's a good thing. I think that, again, I've always held Joe Paterno before the scandal with disdain because I felt like he was just a mascot at Penn State. And he had as much power as the head as the Queen of England or King of England has right now. Okay, just a head of state without a title, without actual power. And it seems like Deion Sanders is just head coach in title, but not making any executive decisions for Colorado. That's my guess.
Well, you're not quite as old as me, so I would say this. I think Joe Paterno was a much better coach than maybe you're giving him credit for. Now, towards the end, you're absolutely right. When he had his leg propped up at the what bowl game was it?
Outback Bowl.
The Outback Bowl, and that I was at. I mean, it clearly that was not. I mean, that was not him. I mean, I think he was better than that. But ultimately, I think Deion Sanders is going to make this work long term because I think NIL in the state that it is not going to change. Travis says, I love that Deion is a mascot. Makes perfect sense. Maybe. And I don't think he can X's and O's with anybody on Tennessee's staff. I don't think he can X's and O's with most of the SEC coaches. And I mean assistant coaches too. But I think he can recruit. I think it's about players. It's about the Jimmies and Joes, not the X's and O's. And he has gotten Colorado on board to hire assistants and provide NIL money that has changed the game in Colorado and made them relevant. So does he win national championships? I wouldn't be surprised if he does at this point. Now, is he a little goofy and does he rub people, especially in the South, the wrong way? Certainly.
Although Southerners watch that game. Did you see the stats and the ratings? Like it was Deion, like Southerners were watching Deion more than they were watching SEC games on Saturday. It was a great stat. I mean
I just don't see how he can fail at this point. Now, the way he can fail is if he starts losing these really good assistant coaches.
That's where I was going to go.
If they have great success because of the talent he's assembled and Washington State comes calling for one of his coordinators and they want to be a head coach, they might go to Washington State, but then he goes out and he tries to replace him with another one. Here's the other thing to remember. Shedeur Sanders and is it Travis Hunter, I believe. I mean, those are big monster gets, and Sanders is his son, and eventually those guys are going to go off to the NFL, and he has another son that plays and then a son that's a videographer. But I don't think it's just about his son. But I'll say this. Shedeur Sanders, if you haven't watched him play, if Tennessee has Shedeur Sanders, they're every bit as good as they were last year, maybe better on offense. I mean, he is an incredible talent. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't watch Jackson State. I didn't know that, but I can watch Shedeur Sanders for roughly 3 minutes or 8 plays and tell you that he is very, very good. Light on his feet, has good pocket presence, knows when to run, when not to run. Don't be surprised if he's the number 1 pick in the NFL draft one day because he has size too. So he's not going to have Shedeur Sanders forever. So then I think the quarterback position becomes an issue. But with what he's done,
Sean Lewis might get a job after this year. The offensive coordinator. I would hire Sean Lewis right now if I were about half the SEC.
No, I agree.
And what happens when look at Ed Orgeron? And I'm not saying I think Deion Sanders is a lot smarter than Ed Orgeron. Like I think Deion Sanders' IQ like laps Ed Orgeron's like 5,000 times. Okay, but I will say The minute Steve Ensminger left and Joe Brady left, look at what happened to Ed Orgeron in LSU. And you're saying that can't happen to Deion at Colorado?
No, it can. But Travis also says he leaves when his son does. This is a guy at Jackson State who said, I'm eventually going to leave. And no coach says that. During your tenure, say, I'm eventually going to leave for a bigger and better job. I want to build something here. And he did. So far, he said at Colorado, he's been blown away and he loves it there. And he never even thought he would be there. And I know this is a honeymoon period. Don't be surprised if he's at Colorado long term, because that's going to turn out to be a pretty good job, because NIL, you can recruit people to there. They were able to recruit out of Compton back in the day because a lot of parents want their kids out of Compton. That's why Bill McCartney won a share of the national championship in the early 90s. So don't be surprised if he stays there long term. And I don't think he's going to the NFL. Why would you come to the SEC that's going to be tougher? If the Georgia job opens up tomorrow, they're not going to call Deion, first of all. But if they did, would you take that job?
No, in particular, if you can recruit out in Colorado. All right, hot take. I'm about to trigger so many people. If I got a choice between living in Colorado, Alabama, or Mississippi, I'm living in Colorado. I'm sorry. It's so much nicer than Alabama or Mississippi. Come at me, SEC fans. I don't care. Okay. When Deion said he was looking when he was at Jackson State, it's because he was in Jackson. Jackson or Boulder? Dave, where are you going to live?
Well, I mean, I would live in Boulder over Jackson. I haven't been to Boulder. I've been in the Denver airport. It looks beautiful. I've heard it's fantastic, but I will say this. I mean, at the end of the day, I would rather live in the South. Now, there are places in Alabama that I wouldn't want to live. And there are places in Mississippi I wouldn't want to live. But as a whole, I would rather live in the South. But there are a lot of people like you, and I think he's been genuinely taken aback with how nice it is. He's Caleb Calhoun.
He's a Southern boy.
Well, he is. And I don't think he'd take the let me backtrack on something I said. I don't think he'd take the Florida State job because I think they kind of stiff-armed him when he expressed interest. I think he'd take the Florida job out of spite.
And then Tennessee has to worry, because if Deion, with his recruiting ability, recruiting Florida, then I will say Tennessee's got everybody will line up for that job as an assistant.
He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports. It is weekdays at 10 a.m. Hit like and subscribe. Share it with your friends. Tell a friend. Leave us a review on our podcast channels. We appreciate it. Have a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, whenever it may be. Smoky Mountain Red said Boulder to Gainesville. That is a great point. The personal enjoyment would not be the same in Gainesville as it is in Boulder. Have a fantastic day, evening, morning, afternoon, whatever it may be when you're watching. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Off